We will bring you all of those updates, but we move on now, and Iran has agreed to hold a fourth round of nuclear talks with the United States on Sunday in Oman. Foreign Minister Abbas Araqchi said today, adding that the negotiations were advancing. US President Donald Trump, who withdrew Washington from a 2015 deal between Tehran and world powers meant to curb its nuclear activity, has threatened to bomb Iran if no new deal is reached to resolve the long unresolved dispute. The negotiations are moving forward, and naturally, the further we go, the more consultations and reviews are needed, Araqchi said in remarks carried by Iranian state media. The delegations require more time to examine the issues that have been raised. However, what remains important is that they are on a forward-moving path and are gradually entering into the details. The fourth round of indirect negotiations, which was originally scheduled for May the 3rd in Rome, will now take place in Oman on May the 11th. Well, joining us to discuss this continuing situation over Iran's nuclear deal is Quinton A. Hitchcock, an American political consultant joining us from Houston, Texas. Quinton, thank you as always for being here with us. I want to take a look at the broader ramifications of this before we discuss the specifics. Of course, Trump withdrawing the United States from a previous nuclear agreement. What has happened following that, which has led us to this point where we are now?
Well, I think both countries have a lot to gain from coming to an agreement. And it's good to be with you, Joshua. But a key aspect to this, and one of the biggest factors, is Israel. Remember, the president is running a tough campaign on peace in the Middle East. That's largely what got him elected. But he's going to face a lot of pressure from Israel, who has a very, very tough relationship with Iran. So that's going to be the biggest aspect to this. The president, as you mentioned earlier, has already threatened military action and further crushing economic sanctions on Iran. So that's Iran's motivation, is to avoid those. They certainly don't want that. That's going to make it more difficult for their economy, their people to prosper. And the last thing they want is a military conflict with the United States. And then, of course, President Trump and much of the United States government wants at all costs to avoid conflict in the Middle East, particularly as it relates to Israel. Let's not forget that the deal that President Trump exited out of in 2015 was highly favorable for the United States. There were a couple things in that deal that the president did not like. My expectation is that we're going to see a deal with Iran and the United States that looks very, very similar to the one that the president walked away from in 2015.
Yes, and of course, this round of talks was scheduled for the beginning of May. It was blamed, the postponement, on technical issues. Do you think there was something else at play there? Because there were also Iranian talks set to be held with European nations as well. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I think a lot of that, remember, President Trump and the Pentagon had a rather aggressive campaign against the Houthis, which we know are a proxy backed by Iran financially. So I think that had a lot to do with it. I think the United States is not messing around with Iran. They're not going to be flexible with any types of negotiations as it pertains to a nuclear deal. And I think Iran is coming to the table now because I think they sense that this is really the best and only opportunity that they're going to have to come to an agreement of any kind. If Iran has known anything, it's that President Trump's stance towards Iran has been tough, but it's not going to change. And when the president is using rhetoric on the record in the Oval Office that, quote, we might bomb Iran, we could use military action, we could go to war, we're going to impose further crushing economic sanctions that hurt their economy, Iran has no choice but to listen. And I'm glad that they finally are.
Yes, absolutely. Now, looking ahead to these talks that are going to take place on Sunday, it may be the case that further talks are needed. But what are the topics that are being discussed, and what would a nuclear deal between the United States and Iran potentially look like?
That's a great question, and I'm so glad you asked. So the previous nuclear deal required Iran to eliminate and destroy 98% of their uranium. Okay, that's a great thing for not just us. That's a great thing for the rest of the world. The problem with that nuclear deal and what the president did not like is that Iran's nuclear program, which has existed for over 50 years, was going to be still in use, but for civilian use only, for civilian purposes, things like nuclear energy, etc. Now, I think this deal could potentially look very similar. The vast majority of uranium gets destroyed that Iran cannot access. They have to adhere to international nuclear inspections. But I think the key difference is that I expect a deal in the future with Iran and the United States allows Iran to continue their nuclear program for civilian use. That's my expectation. I think that is why they're coming to the table. And as you mentioned, that's why they have agreed to a fourth round of negotiations, which that is no small feat. I want to remind your viewers, Iran and the United States have about as worse of a relationship as any two countries on earth. So the fact that leaders are coming to the table, not once, not twice, not three times, but four times for negotiations, that is an extraordinary telling feat. And I think it's because Iran sees that they have an opportunity as well.
Quinton A. Hitchcock, as always, thank you very much for your insights ahead of those talks, which are coming on Sunday. We will bring you those updates and any news we get from them. Moving now, and